I mentioned to you already last time, two names associated with classical conditioning are Ivan Pavlov and John Watson, an American who wrote the book on behaviorism. We already commented on behaviorism, and I'll be saying something about behavior therapy by next time, if not later today. Before conditioning, the unconditioned stimulus produces an unconditioned response, and the conditioned stimulus does not produce the same response. It may produce an orienting response or some other response, but it doesn't produce the same kind of response. What is the conditioning? You pair the unconditioned stimulus and the conditioned stimulus, the food and the bell. It helps if the conditioned stimulus occurs just before the unconditioned stimulus by a half a second. And after conditioning, the conditioned stimulus elicits a conditioned response that's similar to the unconditioned response. So that's classical conditioning. And I went over some of the terms of classical conditioning with you last time. I talked about backward conditioning. The conditioned stimulus has to precede or coincide with the unconditioned stimulus. You can't feed the dog and then ring the bell. Feed the dog and then ring the bell, because you're not conditioning the dog now to salivate in response to the bell. That will not cause the dog to salivate. You have to ring the bell, then feed the dog, ring the bell, then feed the dog. So the conditioned stimulus has to signal that the unconditioned stimulus is coming, not that it happened already. So the thing to know about backward conditioning is that it doesn't work. I talked about extinction. Extinction consists of presenting the conditioned stimulus alone, and the response grows weaker. In this case, with the conditioned immune response, it may have grown weaker, but not weak enough to not kill the rats. So it persisted long enough to weaken the immune system. Even though they just kept presenting the saccharin, the animals were having their immune system suppressed enough that eventually killed them. Spontaneous recovery is that after a period of time with extinction, you bring the animal back into the situation and the response returns. So the extinguished response comes back. So you ring the bell, ring the bell, ring the bell. Eventually the dogs stop salivating. Bring the dog back the next day, ring the bell again, they salivate again. That's called spontaneous recovery. Stimulus generalization. So let me tell you about stimulus generalization. If the bell has a tone of 1,000 hertz, let's say that that's our conditioned stimulus. A bell that rings at 1,000 hertz. So just for reference, the A above middle C, the A above middle C is 440 hertz. That's when you hear the violins tuning up before the orchestra plays, they're probably tuning up to 440. Unless they're in France, they tune up to 444. That's their standard A. They think they're pretty sharp. How many are musicians in here? So they're the ones that giggled at that joke, so you can tell. All right, so if the pitch of a tone is a little above, it's considered sharp. It's below, it's called flat. All right. So you have a 1,000 hertz tone as a conditioned stimulus. And then we train the animal, we paired that with food, and we're going to plot the number of drops of saliva in response to tones of various frequencies. So, whoops, let me just. So here's our 1,000 hertz, and we're plotting the response strength. And in this case, it's drops of saliva. The conditioned stimulus is paired with the unconditioned stimulus, food, so the animal has been conditioned to respond to salivate. So we're going to get a good response to a 1,000 hertz tone presented by itself. So here's the conditioned stimulus alone. In other words, now we're just presenting the bell without the food on this trial. And we're looking at the number of drops of saliva. So we've trained the animal, so we're getting a good response. But suppose we presented 1,100, so a slightly higher pitch, or 1,200, or something higher, or something lower. It turns out that the degree of response falls off with the similarity or lack of similarity. For stimuli close to the value that was conditioned, you get a good response, but if it gets far enough away, you get less of a response. And so this is known as stimulus generalization. You saw the video of Little Albert, Watson and Rayner. You read about the story of Little Albert in the Cowlitz book. Little Albert was trained to do what? What was the response? What was the unconditioned stimulus for Little Albert? Loud noise. What was the conditioned stimulus? Furry rabbit. And so what did they do? They presented the rabbit, then they banged the gong. And what did Little Albert do? He cried. Right? And then he cried in response to a monkey. And he cried in response to a man with a Santa Claus mask. What do we call this? Stimulus generalization. So he responded to the other furry animals as if they were the animal that had been paired. See, one of the themes in psychology, or one of the themes right here, these two ideas are very powerful ideas of psychology. When I came in today, many of you recognized me. How'd you do it? I mean, I'm not the same person I was before. I'm older. I had a haircut. Right? How do you recognize that it was me? Well, you need to learn how to respond to something that is the same as if it's the same. But you also need to be able to distinguish between somebody else. Right? So it's not okay to respond to a woman that looks like your girlfriend as if she is your girlfriend. Right? You get in trouble for doing stuff like that. Oh, I thought he was so-and-so. No, you didn't. Well, you know, you get arrested. So you need to know, you don't want to ignore your friend when you see them. Then they'll be annoyed, you know, if you just refuse to talk to them. But you also want to recognize them when they're the same and also distinguish when they're different. So discrimination and generalization are two things that are important. They're in sort of competition with each other in a way. And Pavlov studied them both. So Pavlov studied stimulus generalization, and this curve is called the generalization gradient or generalization curve, showing that the animal will respond to something similar. Doesn't have to be exactly the same stimulus, but something similar. He also studied discrimination. So his way of studying discrimination was to have a CS plus, say 1,000 hertz tone, and a CS minus, which might, for example, be a 1,400 hertz tone. And this one is paired with the food, and this one is paired with no food. So now the animal has two kinds of trials. Trials in which we ring one bell, ding, and another bell, ding. And one of them is paired with food and the other one isn't. So the animal learns to discriminate, to respond maximally. And it turns out that if the conditioned stimulus is 1,000 and the CS is 1,000 and the CS minus, what did I say, 1,400? Now you get a maximal response to something, let me put the axis all above it. We get a maximum response to something actually lower away from the CS minus. This is the CS minus. So it sort of repels the maximal response. And so we've had, by presenting a CS plus and a CS minus, we've actually shifted the maximal response in this case. It's one of the results of stimulus generalization. Pavlov also created what he called an experimental neurosis. He made the things more and more and more similar until the dogs began barking. So he had one in case the CS plus was a circle and the oval, and he made them more and more similar. The dogs began barking and acting like they were upset. He called that an experimental neurosis. I told you already about taste aversion or Garcia conditioning at the beginning of the lecture. So these are some of the terms of classical conditioning. And there's another approach, largely associated with B.F. Skinner and Edward Thorndike. Thorndike comes a little bit earlier. Here's a picture of B.F. Skinner. You saw him in the video. He's working with a rat in a Skinner box. And I'll go through the paradigm of the Skinner box with you today and a bit next time. You saw him at pictures of him as a young man and also as quite a bit older man. He also wrote novels. Some of you may have read Walden 2 in high school. Did they assign you to read Walden? Did they assign you to read Walden 2, the novel? So some folks are not nodding their head yes, and some not. So Thorndike put cats in a box. He captured an alley cat, put it in a box, put a piece of liver next to it, and there was a lever that if the cat pulled on the lever, it would unlock the box, and the cat could push the lid up and jump out and eat the liver. So he placed the cat in the box, and the question was, what would the cat do if you put an alley cat in a box with liver on the outside? The cat will eat liver. So the cat arched its back enraged, it bit at the cage, it scratched, it clawed, it meowed, it hissed, it began to groom itself, it licked, it went to sleep, it got up, it walked around in circles, it bit the cage, it scratched at things, it did various things, and eventually by accident bumped the lever, startled in response to that. Eventually it pushed against the lid, jumped out, and ate the liver. And he plotted. He did this every night. Put the cat in the box, watched the cat, timed. How long did it take the cat to get out of the box? So each trial was one night, and he plotted the time to escape. In the first night it was very long, and over time it decreased. And Thorndike said, how is it that the cat is able to learn? What's going on in the behavior of this cat? How can we explain that the behavior of the cat that changes? So he decided this. He said any behavior that leads to a reinforcing outcome is going to increase in strength. So he said that the cat has a habit hierarchy. It has a list of things it can do. It can purr. It can turn circles. It can turn to the right. It can turn to the left. It can groom its paws. It can meow. It can arch its back. It can do all sorts. It can bite the cage. It can do various, it can claw at things. And it can engage in these behaviors. And any behavior that is followed by a reinforcement, so getting out and eating the liver, he called a primary reinforcement, like eating food is a primary reinforcement. The animal didn't need to be trained to be reinforced by food. Will increase in strength. So let's talk about shaping of behavior. So this is Thorndike and the law of effect. This one is an example of a learning curve. We'll have some other examples later. And Skinner modifies this box, and it becomes known as the Skinner box. And Skinner's version of this psychology is called operant psychology. So Thorndike would have used the term instrumental conditioning as opposed to operant. And what Skinner's got in this box, he's got a number of things set up. So he's got a device, he's got a food tray, and a device full of pellets of food on the outside, and a machine so that when he pushes a button, a pellet of food will be released into the tray inside the cage. There's also a grid. He's got a rat, for example, in there walking around on a grid with sawdust underneath so that the rat pees and poops, goes down into the sawdust to keep the rat healthy in there. There might be a light. We'll say more about that. And so we've got a rat in the Skinner box moving around. We're going to turn the light on, and we decide we want to train this rat to push a bar. So there's a bar in here, a lever, and we're going to reinforce it with pellets of food. This is called shaping. And some of you who are psych majors will take a course. So after you take Psych 201 and 202, then you may take a course, I think it's 302, where you do a learning lab and they teach you how to work. Everybody gets a rat and work with such a rat. Don't know if Kyle ever took that course. Did you take a course? Were you an undergrad here?
No.
Okay. Did you have a course where you trained a rat to push a bar?
No, we never got to do that.
So his university, what university was it?
I went to UC Berkeley.
So UC Berkeley. They're not as good as we are here. They didn't give him that experience, but everybody here gets that class. So you get that class, maybe it was one of the options. Maybe they give you an option, take a learning lab or something else. At any rate, they give you a rat. So you go to the cage where the rats are kept, and you don't grab the rat and choke it to death, but you take it gently because you won't be able to work with the rat if you terrorize it. So you take the rat gently. These rats have been bred for generations not to bite. The ones that bite, they don't let them breed. So these rats are gentle rats. And they're clean. They don't carry diseases. You don't have to worry about rabies or plague or any other things that wild rats might carry. So you take the rat and take him and put him in the cage gently into the Skinner box. Close the lid, and we've got a rat in the Skinner box now. And the rat it's going to look around, it'll turn circles, it'll look at the cage, it'll sniff over in this corner, sniff in that corner, it might groom its paws, and sit up on its hind legs, and begin doing various behaviors. But you want the rat to press the bar. You want to train the rat to press the bar, and you want to use food as a reinforcer. Food is a primary reinforcer. So we've got a wire coming out of here with a button we can push, and if we push the button, it'll go click and release a pellet of food. So if I push this button, attached by a wire to this device, it'll go click, pellet of food come up there. So what we do is we just watch the rat for a while. The rat calms down, he becomes oriented to the box. Our job is to train the rat to press the bar. Now, shaping means reinforcing the animal for a series of successive approximations to the behavior you want. Now, for the rat to be able to press the bar, it has to be close to the bar. So you want to reinforce the animal, it has to face the bar. It has to be close to the bar. So the first thing you do is you get it to face the bar and reinforce that. Then you get it to be closer to the bar and face the bar. Then you get it to be close to the bar and face the bar and lift up its forelegs. Then you have to get it to be close to the bar, facing the bar, lift up its forelegs and touch the bar. Then you have to get it to press the bar down. So that's a series of approximations to the behavior you want. Any of you seen the commercial? These are old commercials now, where the little rabbit takes the money and puts it in the piggy bank, or other kind of You know, if you watch Pet Star, I mentioned that already earlier with Mario Lopez. Other animal tricks, if you've seen any Disney movies where the animals do what they're trained to do and they're not animated, of course they can get the animation to do anything. This is called shaping of behavior, where you reinforce it for a series of successive approximations. So we're going to feed it, that's what we call a reinforcement. So the food is a primary reinforcement. And when I press the bar, so I wait till the animal it does its thing, it's calmed down, and now it's facing the bar. I push the button, click, and what happens? The rat is going to jump when it hears the click, be startled a bit, and then it'll go back to sniffing around, and eventually it'll discover there's a pellet of food there and eat it. And the rat will go back to doing various things, and when it's facing the bar, again, I push the button, click, and the rat, again, might jump a little bit, and then it'll move around, and then it'll find the food and eat it. And pretty soon, when I go push the button and it goes click, instead of the animal jumping in response to click, it'll run over and eat the food pretty quickly. So it's learned that the click is paired with food, that when the click happens, food is there. So the click becomes a secondary reinforcer. Now I wait till the rat is facing the bar and closer to the bar before I'll push the button. Now the rat is spending more of its time facing the bar. So it faces the bar, but now I need it to be closer. So I wait for it to come closer, then I go click, and he goes and eats the food. Standing here, it goes back to doing other things. When it's facing the bar, click, goes and eats the food. Now it has to be closer. So I make it, and I put higher and higher requirement before I'll reinforce it. Now I need it to be close and facing and lift up its forepaws before I will reinforce. Finally, I wait till it touches it. Finally, I wait till it pushes the bar. So now it's on its hind legs, touches the bar, pushes the bar. Eventually, I can put it on automatic and go home. So once I get the rat to be pressing the bar regularly in lab, I now turn it on automatic and the computer will reinforce the rat. The rat will go around, turning around, doing its various things, pressing the bar, and when you come back the next day, it's pressing the bar and eating the food. We've shaped the rat, pressed the bar for food as a reinforcer. All right, well, we'll continue with it next time.